Hello, indie readers and lovers. We are back with another episode of Indie Choice Picks. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of Sporkman? Yes, I said that right. You know, the little things that are really weird. They're not quite a fork, they're not quite a spoon, but you had them in middle school and you probably made slingshots out of them like I did. Anyways, have you ever heard of a Sporkman? Well, most of us haven't, but guess what? Sporkman is going to Japan. Word. So, sit back and relax as I take you through the mind of the creator of Sporkman Goes to Japan. It is actually a very interesting concept that this creator has come up with. It takes on a likeliness of a lot of anime, manga characteristics, as well as a lot of funny, humorous comedy. So, that Indiegogo is running right now. So, if you enjoyed this interview, I would suggest you go and back it ASAP. All right. So, sit back and relax. Let me bring to you guys the creator of Sporkman Goes to Japan. Enjoy. Hello, Eric. Thank you for coming on the show. I've been following you guys' comic Sporkman. I'm just so blown away that this is actually a thing, and it looks really cool so far. So I had to get you guys on the show. So I'm gonna turn it over to you. Just kind of tell the audience about yourself, where you're from, and how did you and your colleague come up with Sporkman? I gotta know.
All right. Well, first, thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Um, Sporkman actually goes back quite a ways. It's really nothing new for me. Sporkman we actually created back in 1996, and at that point, it was really nothing more than a concept and a sketch that one of my co-writers did, and it was us just mainly brainstorming and coming up with ridiculous concepts for superheroes and like what would be a worthless power to have and stuff like that. And we came up with a bunch of different ideas, but the one that we just really got a kick out of was Sporkman. And so for a little while we didn't really do anything with it. My one writing partner Chris, uh, me and him from the time we were little, uh, we liked making kind of our own comics and stuff like that. And so, but it wasn't something we really pursued to actually do it professionally or actually get like a legit comic book made or anything.
Okay.
And then over a few years, the design of Sporkman changed from the initial concept, because I started getting into customizing some action figures, and I took this Power Ranger figure and I took real sporks and I kind of did a redesign of Sporkman, and that's actually part of why his color scheme is the color scheme it was, because I was working with a red Power Ranger figure, which had the red and white and black and gold emblem and stuff like that. So a lot of people that say, yeah, the character has a Super Sentai kind of vibe, and it's like that's kind of why it wasn't really like it was planned that way. It all came from uh, making that first figure to determine, start gravitating towards the look that he has now. Um, and then I guess it was 2003 or 2004. Um, my wife and I would have a big Halloween party every year, and I said, "Well, I'm going to make a Sporkman costume and surprise everyone." Um, so I went all out and made this whole Sporkman costume and everything, and it was around that same time that my wife and I started going to conventions for the first time.
Okay.
And I entered a costume contest. People were like, "Oh, you got to take Sporkman to the costume contest." And so I went out there, and people absolutely loved it there. They just thought the character was hilarious and everything. Um, and I would go on stage and people would start chanting "Spork, Spork, Spork." They just loved it. It was crazy. And one thing that a lot of people kept asking me, they're like, "Hey, when's the comic book coming out?" And so I said to my friend Chris and Chuck, I said, people are really responding to the character. They really think it's funny. wouldn't it be cool if we actually made a comic book of Sporkman? So that's what kind of got the ball rolling to actually do a comic of this. It was all this other stuff actually inspired the comic, not the other way around.
Okay.
Where you would say, oh, well, someone might do a costume based on their comic character. This was, all the roles were reversed. And so initially we thought we're going to be doing one issue. We never expected to take it beyond that. We said we need to do one standalone issue. Doing some sort of origin would, take too long. And quite honestly, we didn't care about an origin. We said that's not the interesting part. His double life, that's not what's interesting. He's a funny character. We need to focus on that. So, we sat back and we're like, okay, well, what story do we tell? And I said, hey, people loved it when I wore this costume at a sci-fi convention. Let's come up with an adventure for Sporkman at a sci-fi convention. So so that first issue was kind of meta in a way, that we were, to a degree, we were writing to the fans of the character and the people that regularly attended that convention. There was a lot of Easter egg things in it that, nothing would be lost on another reader, where they would say, oh, I wasn't there, I don't get it. In the comic, Sporkman isn't me, he's the character. The name of the convention, we just came up with a different name and stuff like that. But we did have little Easter eggs that were really treats for people that regularly attended that convention. For example, at the time I was working with a small film company that was working on a sci-fi film, and I was the props guy for it. And I said, hey, why don't I throw some of the alien characters in there from your film? So, they're just kind of in the background. Anyone that reads the comic, they're not going to know. But the people that were at that convention, the people who would be the first ones to get their hands on that comic, they would open it up and they'd be like, oh, I know that person. I know that person.
It's kind of like you took like real life like scenarios and made it into kind of like a story, kind of like what you, like you said, like Easter eggs. I know a lot of writers that do that, where they would take like real life scenarios or like real life places and throw it in their comic book, just as kind of like a nod to people who know them personally, to kind of say, hey, I remember this or that, or I remember you, or I remember when this happened and we were together, and stuff like that. That's what
I think the biggest one in it is, at the beginning, Sporkman is at a superhero panel. And he's talking to a bunch of other like would-be heroes, or at least cosplayers dressed up as heroes. And this one, he points out, Captain Pong. When I entered the costume contest, this other guy had his own superhero character, Captain Pong, that he did a costume of. And I thought it was hilarious. And I'm like, this is totally going to fit in a Sporkman comic. And so I asked him, I'm like, hey, can I put Captain Pong in this? Because I think it's hilarious. And, he's like, oh, it's so cool. So, we have that in there. And again, it's funny to anyone that reads it. They don't have to know the backstory, but it's interesting when you actually do know where all these little inspirations and stuff came from in it.
Now, do you still dress up as Sporkman for like Halloween parties or conventions or anything like that? Do you like appearance?
Well, when I made the costume, I expected to wear it 1 or 2 times. I never expected to wear it.
I know where this is going.
15 times or whatever. But eventually, it started getting in rough shape, because it wasn't meant to hold up long term. And I know I had given the one gauntlet to someone and they lost it, so it's missing a gauntlet. I have gained some weight since then, so I don't even know if I would fit the jumpsuit anymore. I'd love to someday. This was at least 8 to 10 years ago.
Oh,
the last time I wore it.
You've had that character in the work for a while then.
Yeah, the last time I actually wore it was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 48-Hour Film Festival.
Yep.
Well, me and some friends had entered in one of them, and as you know, you have a very limited time to come up with what your costumes, props, or anything like that is. And of course, I had a Sporkman costume. So the short film we did was called Love at First Plight. And it's basically that this woman, like some guys come after her. Sporkman jumps in, saves the day. She falls in love with Sporkman. So Sporkman has actually been in a live action film in a way already for that 48-hour film festival. Is yeah, pretty crazy. Never expected way back then to have brought the character back, because
What did you make the gauntlets out of? I gotta know. Did you somehow find actual giant size sporks to put on your arms, or did you have to make that out of like paper mache or something?
what both those and the mask were made out of was, I needed something that was that general shape, and the closest thing I could find was they had these cheap $5 Jason masks out at Halloween time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought 3 of those, and I had to putty in the holes, and I had to Bondo over it. It was a lot of work trying to sculpt it to something that didn't look like, a Jason mask. And yeah, that's what I used for those 3 parts.
That's simply. I'm sorry. When I saw the Twitter, I was completely blown away. I was asking myself, I was like, is this a real thing? Are people actually making a comic book out of it? And then I go and I check out your artwork and such, and I go and I'm like, the artwork is cool, and I just have to get in touch with the creators and just pick their brains for like, why a spork? Like, why a spork? Of all the little plastic utensils you got, why a spork? Because it sounds funny, or what?
I think that's part of it. Is a spork is just a funny utensil in a
Yeah,
way,
it's so
because
weird.
it's not, it's more like for camping or something, where you just have to be efficient with what you take with you, because
Mhm.
uh, quite honestly, I mean, you ever have like a cup of like pudding or applesauce or something like that, and you try to get it out with a spork, that thing's like worthless.
Yeah.
you know but it just doesn't work. So to have a character where he thinks of that as a plus,
Mhm.
um it was just kind of something funny to do. And you know we after that one, we came out with Sporkman Goes to Japan, which is what we're running our campaign on now.
Mhm.
Um, and we said, okay, well, we want to go back to Sporkman, but we want to go bigger. Let's make it 2 issues instead of 1.
Mhm.
And we really underestimated what action scenes do to your page count.
Yeah.
And it just kind of grew and grew and grew, and we already had a contract with our artist and stuff for 2 issues. And then we put out 1, and I think within about a year, maybe a little less, we put out issue 2. And then it was at least a year till we did 3, because we had to get a new contract and lengthen the whole process. um, and in between there, we also did like a short 10-page story with another artist, and it was pretty much like a promotional thing, almost like an ash can, where we were just making little photocopy mini comics. And
Mhm.
we did a very limited run of those in a regular comic format. But a lot of times, like, we don't even count it. We say we put out 4 issues, 4 full-size issues. um, and then we we pretty much just ran out of money, because at that time, social media was very new. I know
Mhm.
MySpace was around, but
Wow, you talking about MySpace, dude? That's
yeah,
like
I
2003.
I know Facebook. I don't think Facebook existed, or if it did, it was in its infancy. Um, Crowdfunding was just coming out, because I remember I found an old email from my writing partner Chuck, him saying, "Hey, there's like this new thing called Kickstarter, and like people will donate money to get your projects made." But that was about the time where we were kind of just, we couldn't go any further with it.
Yeah, you're
financially.
just like kind of mad about it because I know right now Kickstarter is in its like 10th year, so I think it turned 10 this year, so it's been around since what 2009 or something like that. So
Yeah, and about that time, I think it might have been about 2008 where things were just kind of going dormant for us. I know our uh, our friend Chris, who was a co-writer on conventions and contributed to Japan. He moved. Life goes on. You get different hobbies and distractions, and going back to Sporkman was kind of like a hobby we would have to spend money on and all this effort to do, and we didn't really feel like we could get a big enough audience. Just you know, we had no way to promote it the way you do now,
yeah.
and we had no way to finance it the way we do now. Except out of pocket.
Hmm.
And so we didn't do anything with it for a long time. But Chuck and I, we had always been talking about it for all those years. We knew what we wanted the next story arc to be, and every once in a while we would say, "Yeah, we need to sit down and really work on that and write it up." And it would maybe every few months we would spend about an hour just knocking around ideas. And uh, about a year or two ago, uh, Chuck started getting more into the indie comic scene and networking, and he kind of lit a fire under my butt and said,
Yeah.
"You know what? We keep talking about this. Let's
Let's
actually
do it.
move forward and do it."
Hmm.
And he really spearheaded the whole thing, and he really kind of pulled me off the ground and got me to actually start getting involved in it again. And so we said, okay, well, let's have a game plan here. Um, we have 4 issues right now that no one's really heard of. They've been around for years. People
Hmm.
could have gone to our website, picked some up or whatever. But basically, we were starting new. For most people, they never heard of it. This is a new thing. We're new on the scene, even though we're a bunch of old guys on the scene. And so I said, well, what can we do with our existing products, our existing assets? And we thought that the biggest thing we could do to really improve what we had already done was color. All the issues have been black and white, again, for budgetary reasons.
Hmm.
And we said, okay, well, let's start getting this stuff colorized, and then we'll move on to the new stuff, because we want all the new stuff to be colorized right out of the gate. Um, so we were able to get a colorist for our first issues, Sporkman Conventions, and um, that we got that done. And then we decided, okay, we know Japan is a lot bigger. We're talking about a total of 91 pages versus 24.
Hmm.
Um, we knew we weren't going to just be able to take that out of pocket. So we said, okay, we're going to have to do a crowdfund for this. Um, and it was shortly after, I think, we launched the indiegogo to colorize Japan, which was last year at the tail end of summer.
Hmm.
We were approached by a publisher, Wicked Publishing, and they were interested in signing us. And we we had to wait on a bunch of stuff and think about it and wait for the campaign to be over. And so about, I think it was probably like early February, we actually officially signed with them. And they have conventions right now. They're doing pre-orders, getting their initial pre-orders done for that. And we have our campaign going right now for Sporkman Goes to Japan. And we kind of, we didn't make our goal the first time.
Hmm.
We had a lot of support, but we were still fairly unknown, and there were some things in the campaign that we thought we could have done a little bit better. So we kind of restructured the whole thing when we relaunched it, and we actually think we have a stronger campaign now than what we did. as far as the colorist we have right now. She's amazing. So we're really happy with that. We have some exclusive posters tied to the campaign that are really cool. That was all stuff that we didn't really have before. So I'm really happy with where we are as far as what our campaign is offering. But we're still really behind. We just hit 50% today, and we only have about 6 more days to go.
Well, you did a lot better than before. I'm looking at the campaign right now. In fact, I'm going to share the
I
screen.
think when the campaign closed last time, the total dollar amount we raised was higher than what it is now. Now that campaign went for 60 days, and I think this is maybe 40 something. So we're going for less time. We're going for a smaller goal. We were actually able to tighten up the budget a bit and make the goal smaller. But as far as what we've raised so far, we're not as high as we were last time. We're probably about $1,000 short. And looking at it, I'm like, okay, well, we have a lot of contributors that were there before and they aren't there now.
Mhm.
What's really changed? And the biggest thing I can really point to would maybe be the fact that this time around, instead of doing fixed funding, we're doing flex funding. And I know that can scare off a lot of people because they say, oh, well, okay, what if you get our money and then you run and we never get a product? And what I would tell people is that part of the reason we're doing flex funding is when this ends, we're planning on doing a Kickstarter for the balance of whatever it doesn't earn. And the reason for that is there's some people that Kickstarter is all they know. It's kind of like saying, hand me a Kleenex. Everyone knows you mean tissue. Google that. Well, the person might be using Bing, but they know what it is. And there's lots of people I've talked to where I said about an Indiegogo. They say, what's that? And I say, it's a crowd fund. And they go, oh, like Kickstarter. So I think there's just a little bit more name recognition, and so you're going to
Yeah.
get people doing it for that reason. You
Well,
also get
I know a few people who actually do both. Like they would run both a Kickstarter and an Indiegogo back to back. I think it got,
yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing.
yeah, and I think it's smart because let's say you run a Kickstarter and doesn't get a bunch of recognition for that, you can go ahead and do an Indiegogo because I mean people know certain things. I didn't know about Indiegogo. I did a Kickstarter a few years ago, and that's all I thought it was. It was Kickstarter, and then I get on Twitter, and then everyone is doing crowdfunding, but they're doing it through Indiegogo, and I go, "Oh, what's Indiegogo?" So, I mean, I'm pretty sure these are the two biggest ones that are out there, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but I'm pretty sure there's more out there that
Yeah,
just aren't as big.
there's GoFundMe, but that's more like
Yeah. I
like
don't,
a charitable type thing.
yeah, I don't really do GoFundMe. I mean, because anybody can say they need something. I mean, I saw a girl running a GoFundMe page to buy her another MacBook, and she had like five. And I'm like, man, anybody can raise money to get anything.
Oh
Don't,
yeah, so some people are crazy on
yeah.
that, but yeah, with Kickstarter, I figured there's a whole demographic of people using Kickstarter that they might just go on and browse for
Mhm.
projects.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
that's what I do.
they're not hearing, yeah, and they're not hearing about our projects if we're not there. So um, that's that's the big reason for flex funding. It's not like we're going to run away with someone's money. The other thing I would say why people shouldn't worry about the flex funding is we're not looking to complete a project. We
Mhm.
have the comics done. We could have initially just when we signed with Wicked Publishing just immediately offer them in black and white. But
Mhm.
what we're trying to do is take a project that we're really happy with and just make it better and bring it up to what we want our standard to be going forward.
Yeah, I get that
Um,
100%. I know, like me, for example, that I have comic books that are already done, like they're finished. But like me, I know other artists who run Indiegogos, and Kickstarters for the simple fact, like, they want to build an audience around it. They want to have people who can, like, be interested in their work. And of course, like, we all have digital copies of our work. It's also fun to print and to make it available. And there's a ton of people that do that, especially people who publish on webtoons and like tapas and all that stuff. They have the story already done, but it becomes even a bigger project when you can launch a crowdfunder and get even more people behind your initial readers that say, yeah, I want this in print, and, you know, get it funded and get it printed. And that's how it's kind of like a catch-22, because I've heard people say that you can't do a Kickstarter unless you have such and such number of followers and an audience. But they say that you can also
it's more
catch.
like recommended, because you figure whatever audience you have, pick whatever that number is.
Mhm.
You're lucky if you get 10% of
10%.
those
Yeah,
people.
that's usually like the number is 10%. But I've seen people with followers up to 25,000 on Twitter, and they're less than 30% funded. So it's all about how you engage your audience. If you have a good concept and you're getting responses, like how you told us you were doing the whole cosplay thing and it just kind of blew up, and you just decided to run with it. Like, to me, having a big social media following and an audience doesn't really mean anything unless you engage with that audience. Because, like I said, there's people that have, like, you know, 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, and they go and post something and get like 10 likes. And I go, it kind of questions your audience. Like, did you pay for these followers? Are they authentic? Are most of them bots? Like, what's going on here? If you can throw up, I know people who have like 2,000 followers on Twitter, and they can throw up a pretty interesting tweet or post, and right away it can get 20, 40 likes. Now that's an engaging audience, because if you're getting 40 people to like out of 1,000 people that are following you, and you decide to run a Kickstarter, I think that your response will be pretty effective if you decide to do that. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I would tell people that there's no precise formula. It's not like, some sort of chemical reaction where you take this, you add this, and you end up with this.
Yeah, no.
There's going to be so many factors that you can't calculate it. You
Mhm.
can't calculate how to make, a huge audience. Yeah, there's things you can do that will, improve it. I mean, if you got on every day and you told your audience that you hate them, yeah, you're probably not going to get a lot of followers, So, yeah, there's certain do's and don'ts. There's things that can, that can help you or inhibit you, but
Mhm.
there's no perfect formula where you can say if you do X, Y, Z, that equals success.
Yeah, even like when you try to engage, because I'm not a few weeks ago, like, I would never be doing this. I would never be face to face with on a computer and then post it online. I was never that guy to do that stuff, because I live a very private life. But I started working on my comics and stuff like that, getting back into the flow of things. Because I used to be on a Comic-Con circuit for a year, and I would go to Comic-Con, set up, sell, come back. But I never really had a social media presence. It was just, what I look like face to face, but I'm never going to post it like, hey, selfie, and, oh yeah, that's that guy from the convention. I never did that. So me doing this now is totally like getting me out of my comfort zone and engaging with people, and I'm still learning. And a lot of people who are doing, anything, whether it's writing a book or a comic or trying to sell a product or t-shirt, it comes down to how well you engage with your audience and how well they respond. And in order to do that, they're going to have to let them see your face a little bit and kind of go off, and, like, people know who you are just by you posting on social media. So it's a little bit, I know a lot of artists who just refuse to, like, not show their face, but I think showing face when you're trying to do anything is a good way to kind of get your audience or people who are watching a little bit more comfortable with who you are. And that way, if you run something like a campaign or something like that, it has a
Well,
higher chance of being successful.
trying to sell anyone on an indie comic is automatically an uphill battle.
Yes, it is.
Chuck and I have set up at a couple conventions. We did really well at Baltimore Comic Con the two times we set up there. Again, this was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I set up at one a few weeks ago, and it was called a Comic Con, but I think what we all know is that a Comic-Con is now a generic term for an everything pop
Yeah,
culture con.
pretty much. We got
And so
WonderCon,
you
we
get
got Comic Con, we got all these cons that happen like 4 or 5 thousand
right.
times a year.
So you get a ton of people coming in the door that aren't even comic readers to begin with.
Hmm.
And then if they are comic readers, they only read the big names and they don't really have any interest in branching out.
Yeah.
Which I've often asked those people, I'm like, well, why wouldn't you give an indie comic a try? Because at some point you had to pick up that mainstream comic for the first time. At some point, you had your very first issue of Spider-Man. You
Yeah.
know, so it at some point you were willing to give that a try. Why wouldn't you look at something else that potentially you might really like?
Yeah.
You
I
know,
I get that.
I think it's a weird way to look at stuff because if you go, I could look at a movie trailer for an independent movie that doesn't have any big actors or anything in, but if I think the premise is cool and the quality is good, well, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
But
I was reading a book on that too, and a lot of people are because well, it's not like that now because I've noticed a lot of people are going towards indie comics because Marvel and DC, I mean, their quality is just like starting to slowly decline, and people are looking at indie comics and saying, "Man, that's a pretty interesting concept. I'm going to look at this and see what I can do." But I was reading an article on why most people are going towards more mainstream stuff versus independent stuff, and I have to deal with like you said, it's not a lot of information on these certain creators. Like if you watch an independent movie, it looks great, and like a movie is different from comics, obviously. But you look at an independent movie trailer and be like, "Oh, it looks good. I might watch it." But you look at before there was Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and people were promoting their projects, there wasn't a lot that most creators could show. They didn't have platforms like Indiegogo or Kickstarter where you can make a top of the line trailer or a video, introduce yourself to the audience and tell them what the book is about. And I think that's why indie comics is starting to blow up now, because you have these platforms where creators can go in and just give it 110% and make it work, and get people looking at this like, I've never heard of Sporkman before, but I bet you if I click this trailer right now and I watch it, I'm going to be like, wow, this is a really great concept, consider me a backer. And a lot of people back in the day, especially at Comic Cons, yeah, they would go gravitate towards more of the mainstream, like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Thor, and Avengers, and all that stuff, because they were more familiar with those creators and those characters. But when it comes down to indie comics, you're kind of like whipping out $20 for a comic, and you're not really sure if it's going to be worth $20. But today, with social media and the way things are going, especially with the indie comics community, there's so many creators actually getting very creative to show off their characters and their stories, and people are like, yeah, no, I'll drop $20 for a copy of Sporkman, or I'll drop $20 for a copy of Elementals. And that's where that, like, as Marvel and DC are starting to decline, a lot of the indie comics are coming back up, and I find that to be very interesting, especially after I don't know if you heard about the whole Comic Gates like split with between Marvel and DC. Some creators
yeah,
went off on their own and stuff like that. A lot of that is going on, and a lot of people who are still sticking with Marvel and DC are starting to understand that that quality of writing just isn't there anymore. And most of those people who left Marvel and DC are now coming up with their own concepts. And guess what? They're using Indiegogo and Kickstarter to fund their projects, and people who read their original stuff back in the day are seeing these guys going off independent, and some of the stuff that aren't appearing in Marvel and DC anymore are now being able to not have to have a gateway, a threshold, don't have to like submit people for publishing. And then it's getting people more interested in indie comics because those creators are just kind of paving the way for people like you and me to give out quality stuff. Because like I said, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they're really great platforms to just give it 110% in whatever you do. I mean, I saw somebody kill it with just selling an ebook. I mean, an ebook. He wasn't even printed it. He just said, I'm giving away an ebook, and literally crushed it with 150% overfunded. And I go, that's amazing.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah. With any campaign, really, it, I'd say it's even simpler than any campaign. any
Yeah.
post,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're talking about just say post on social media, we're dealing in a time where we're dealing in an age of short attention
Oh
spans,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and especially with social media where people are like scrolling. You have to have something that's going to grab them and make them stop scrolling for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like they say, if you do a text post, and I've even found this in my own experience on like my own business Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
if if you post text only versus a photo, you get like 100 times more people will view the photo than
Mm-hmm.
just read something that's text.
Yeah.
If it's video, that jumps up to like 1,000 times more people than would stop to read the text.
Yeah, because
So
most people are so accustomed to watching like a 30-second cat video or something like that. So I was reading a book. I do a lot of reading, by the way. I was reading a book on like how to run your Kickstarter, and a guy who wrote it was saying like your Kickstarter video, you don't want to make it more than 3 minutes. And I go, really? I thought it would be a little bit longer than 3 minutes. But
no, honestly, you don't. And in some ways, I might be the opposite way to the extreme. But there's a lot of times where my wife would see a video on Facebook or whatever, and she'd be like, "Here, watch this," and the first thing out of my mouth would be, "How long is it?"
yeah.
And if it was longer than like a minute, I'm like, I got better things to do with my time, you know?
Well, you know what I found too is that like most people they do watch like a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff on their phone. Like when I'm at work and I'm bored, like I whip out like YouTube on my lunch break and stuff like that on my phone. But most of the time I found that a lot of people have been watching YouTube via like Xbox on their TV and stuff like that. And they're using it as like an actual TV. So videos on YouTube that used to run for like 1 or 2 minutes, they're now growing in time from anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes of people with interesting content, and that's where these audiences are starting to get built. Like a show like this, like a typical interview for me is probably like an hour, and I'm seeing people that are literally sitting down for a whole entire hour listening to me talk to other creators about their comic books, and they're literally engaging, liking and sharing the videos and sending them off to their friends. And like I said, it's all about how you promote your brand and how you're pushing your idea on people in a sense, because that's what's literally going to get them. And to be like, oh, look, it's that guy from Heroic Studios. He must have another interview up. Or there's this guy that I like to watch because I'm a big like paranormal fanatic. Whenever he launches a video, I'm like the first one there to watch it because his content is very engaging. I don't care how long it is. In fact, I wish some of the videos that I'm into are longer because the content that I'm into is so engaging that people are just, they're making their videos longer and longer and longer and longer because they're getting that response from the audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So for sure. So can you see the second screen?
Can I see a second screen?
Yeah, can you see your campaign open over here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't aware you were sharing it because I was actually trying to refresh the page, and I'm like, this is weird. My page isn't refreshing. I didn't know I was looking at yours.
Yeah, I was
well,
sharing the screen
well,
right now.
well, on my computer, I have the campaign up too. So it just looked, it looked like the video chat window just minimized, and I was looking at my computer. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was funny.
Yeah, no, this is me. I'm able to share screen. This is like why I like Zoom, because I can share the screen and kind of get the audience to kind of see firsthand where your campaign is, first of all, so they can find it. And I post a link in all of my videos so people can actually find your campaign. And that way they can see what your character looks like. We can get a kind of a glimpse of your story and like your character designs and all that fun stuff. So we're going to blast through this really quick because we're kind of like at the halfway point, and I know there's a lot of stuff that going into this. So Sporkman goes to Japan. Is that like number 3? How many other issues are before he goes to Japan?
Just Sporkman conventions, and the way we're planning on doing all our Sporkman stories is we actually kind of have like a certain format that we kind of want to stick with. One is you're never going to pick up Sporkman issue 5
Why that?
or issue 8. Everything we're going to do is self-contained, and that's when we did Japan. The thing you got to remember is we were kind of looking at it in a roughly average page count is each issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we put out 3 issues. All 3 of them are a little bit longer than an average comic, but really there's one reason that studios do that, and that is because they have a monthly budget and they're putting out a book every month. Well, we thought, you know what, we're really not beholden to that, because we're not going to have a regular release schedule. The story's going to be as long as it is. So you may pick up a Sporkman story that's 50 pages long. You may pick up one that's 80 pages long. It's all going to be what best suits the story. And also, we don't want anyone to ever feel, and this is one thing that kept me out of a lot of mainstream comics. When I really got into comics in the 90s, it was Dark Horse, because I could pick up a 4-issue storyline and I got the whole thing. So almost none of the Sporkman stories are ever going to be, well, I don't know what's going on because I didn't read the other ones that came before it, or I didn't read them in order. It's not really going to matter, because even if there's some reoccurring characters or there's threads that connect, at the most it'll be maybe a reference to something and you say, you know what, I'd really like to read that story and find out what that's all about. But it will never be where you're going to feel like you're missing something if you haven't.
So they're independent stories of themselves. Like if you don't read issue 1, it's not going to affect you reading issue 4.
Exactly. People that read Japan, they don't have to have read Sporkman conventions, and vice versa.
I'm a very consistent kind of person. Like if I'm seeing like you're on issue number 3, I'm like, word, where can I get 1 and 2 first? Because I don't want to just jump into this.
Yeah, now that you don't have to worry about. Now, if Sporkman goes to Japan, because it's multiple parts, there is Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and it's actually nice that it was 3 issues, because it works perfectly as a 3-act story. You get Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Okay.
But what we're looking to do is, in the future, if we did this, we wouldn't have broken it up into 3 issues. We would have just put it all together. So part of what this campaign is for isn't just to colorize it, but to be able to make it as a trade, where you just get all 3 together, because it is one story.
Okay. All right.
And we offer it both ways in the campaign. People can get the individual floppies, or they can get the trade, or they can get both. But that's the way we want to tell all our Sporkman stories. So it'll always be like Sporkman conventions. Sporkman goes to Japan. Sporkman goes to Hollywood. Whatever. And that's kind of how we're going to title all our stories. And it's basically going to be kind of the format we go with for everything. We like to come up with ideas and say, wouldn't it be interesting to do this type of story? And let's see what would happen if Sporkman was just kind of dropped into the middle of it.
Okay, I like it. So really quick, give me a quick synopsis of why is he going to Japan? Is there a convention in Japan or something like that, or what's going on?
Okay, well, basically what happens is there's a superhero exchange program. Sporkman joins it, and so where he's going to be sent to see what it's like being a superhero in Japan.
Okay.
And his counterparts, you never actually meet the superheroes from Japan, because they mention that they get sent to the U.S. And yes, at some point in the future, you will meet them too. But so he goes over there, and how we had the idea for the issue was Chuck and I were talking about anime tropes. And we're both big fans of anime, but you know how you can have fun and make fun of some of the stuff you like, and we're like, why is it in anime like there's always this kind of thing or this kind of thing? And so we said, well, what if Sporkman goes to Japan and all that stuff actually exists over there? Like in the Sporkman universe, in Japan, there's anthropomorphic animals. Like that just is a thing. There's of course giant robots, because It's Japan. Of course, there's going to be giant
Or
robots.
there's like that one
So,
character who's always like better. He thinks he's better than all the rest, so he never like really talks much. Like the Sasuke of the group for some reason.
but yeah, we picked a couple things, and we're like, okay, well, we definitely want to include these things. There, like there has to be a kaiju of some sort because it would just be wrong not to.
Yeah, you got to have a kaiju in
So
there
we
for
kind
sure.
Right. So, we developed this whole story and stuff for it. And the other character you're seeing there was Sporkman is Natsumi. And we actually really like her character, and we are definitely going to be bringing her back. She kind of becomes Sporkman's love interest.
Okay.
And what one thing anime have is they always have like some kick-ass female, and we're like,
That's true.
okay, we need a sexy kick-ass girl, and yeah, she's definitely going to be part of the Sporkman universe.
All right. I'm liking the artwork. The artwork is very manga-y, but it has color. So we all know manga doesn't have color, but when they do color, they do have this kind of texture to it.
Well, our artist Giffney, now the poster is done by someone else, but our artist Giffney that has done the covers on the floppies and all the interiors. He's from Indonesia. We met him
Hmm.
online. It was like a website that was basically almost like classifieds. Writers looking for artists looking for writers and projects, things like that.
Yeah, I use
Um,
Upwork for mine. That's where I found my artists, Upwork.com. And it's funny that you're another one where they found their artists overseas, because a lot of us, we use our artists who are overseas or in different countries. So,
well, that's the great thing about the internet is being
Mhm.
able to do that. And he said, hey, I'd be interested in your project, and um, so we sent him a picture of like the action figure and the costume, and we said, okay, well, we want to see what this would look like.
Okay.
Draw this character, and he sent us 3 different images of Sporkman, all completely different styles, and they all looked cool. So one, looked a little bit more like Teen Titans kind of style, and then
Mhm.
there was another one where, the proportions were kind of like the big upper body and then like tiny legs and stuff. But he did these 3 versions, and they were all good, and the one was pretty much exactly what we wanted. We said, okay, do something different with the eyes. That was about it. And it was really great working with him because, being that it's someone from another country that you don't think of as English as the first language and stuff. There was a concern in the back of my head: is it going to be hard to describe stuff? What is there going to be a language barrier? It turns out he speaks fluent English. Wasn't a problem, but it but the thing that I really loved was I didn't have to describe a lot of minor details if they weren't critical to the story. So I might have something in the script, and he would just draw Sporkman with the correct body language, where I didn't have to say, oh, he would be shrugging his shoulders in that shot. I would just, he would interpret that was the correct thing to do to go along with the script.
That's always
So
helpful for
it was a
sure.
great, yeah, it was a great working experience with him, and we didn't have to do a lot of jumping in and saying, well, we'll do it this way or whatever. There was one thing that goes into there was one thing that I didn't describe it enough, and what we got wasn't what I envisioned, but it didn't hurt anything. So we just left it alone. We're like, yeah, it's drawn already, whatever, just
We'll
move
figure
forward.
this out.
Yeah, so I think the one mech had to undergo a big design on the villain's mech and stuff like that. But it wasn't too hard. I mean, if he delivered us something and said, well, here's the idea for the design, it was pretty much like, yep, we like it, or make the shoulders bigger. Not a whole lot of what wasn't a whole lot of us tinkering around with a bunch of minor things.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. Well, we're kind of running low on time. I do have one question for you, though, and it might be I don't know if I were dreaming this or something, but I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw that Sporkman might have a daughter. Is that true?
That well, that was actually a piece of fan art where
Okay.
my writing partner Chuck had like a or a drawing contest on a stream he was doing, and people were supposed to submit concepts for um, female versions of Sporkman.
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
and one of the guys that submitted that was his idea if Sporkman and Natsumi had a daughter that kind of took over the mantle of Sporkman. And Chuck and I really, really dig the design, and we've even considered, if we ever do kind of like a what if sort of story, like we may actually kind of use that concept.
Okay, that's actually pretty interesting. So, let me see.
I've
This
been
in
I've been amazed at the fan art that is out there. You know, I'll see this fan art show up. I'm like, that that is a huge compliment for a creator because if someone has an hour of their day to sit around and sketch something, the fact that they're choosing to draw your character and stuff, I think that's a compliment to
yeah, it makes
what
you
you
like.
created.
It's like, wow, I think I'm doing something right here, guys. There's people who are
Yeah,
sketching my character out.
exactly.
This is fantastic. So, you said you're running a Kickstarter after you are done with the Indiegogo. Tell the
Yeah.
audience what that date is when you're launching your Kickstarter.
Uh, well, I would not know exactly because Chuck's the one that's kind of handling all that.
Okay.
We have 6 days to go, so I don't know. It's possible that Chuck has it set up to automatically start. I don't really know if he has that set up to start automatically. I do know some of the perks. Um, for this, we ran out, and so they won't be carrying over. For example, one of the top tiers, you could get a custom Sporkman action figure,
Yeah, I saw that. That looks
and we
really
only
cool.
had yeah, we only had 4 slots for that. Though those are gone. So of course, when we move over to Kickstarter, those won't transfer over. It'll pretty much just be anything that's not sold out. And for the
Okay.
most part, it's all comic issues. The only thing that isn't a comic issue is the original art for the trade, and it's going to be an exclusive cover for the trade, for the campaigns. If someone gets this later on after the campaigns, it's going to have a different cover to it. But the original artwork for that cover is the very top tier, the very top expensive tier.
Okay. Because I see this interview won't go live until Wednesday next week.
Okay.
And your Indiegogo is going to be done by then. So if you could do me a favor and get the information for the Kickstarter, and what I can do is post the Kickstarter link in the description of this video, so people can go
Okay.
to your Kickstarter and do that. So you have until like next Wednesday to get that information to me, so I can just direct people. So guys, if you're watching the Indiegogo, by the time this goes live, it's going to be done. I apologize for waiting so long to do the interview with you guys, but I will have the Kickstarter link posted in the description below this video, and you guys can just go to the Kickstarter and back Sporkman Goes to Japan over there. All right.
Yeah, and pretty much the goal is obviously going to be smaller on Kickstarter because it's going to be more for the balance of whatever's not earned. I
Yeah.
mean, for all we know, in the next 6 days, it may blow up and we may be fully funded. We don't know.
You don't know. Like usually, like those. I know a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. They use those last like week or so for that push to kind of get that going. So
Yeah,
you
it's
never know.
usually. I mean, I think because I did a lot of research on crowdfunding about a year ago. They say like 40% of your backers are in the first 3 and the last 3 days.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I've seen people who were less than 50% funded and 3 days to go, and boom, they get to like 100%, if not more, to like 110, 150. So it's totally doable. But I mean, if you guys do decide to run a Kickstarter, that's probably an audience over there that you haven't tapped yet, because I don't know, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they have different audiences. I don't know if one person does one and doesn't do the other. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. But like I said, you might be able to tap another audience over there on Kickstarter. And if not, um, I would say Kickstarter would get you guys a little bit more money, a little bit more readers, stuff like that. So I mean,
Yeah,
you never know what can
and
happen.
like I had said, it's flex funding now. With Kickstarter, it's fixed funding, so there would be a potential if we didn't meet our goal, we don't get funded. As a matter of fact, we're thinking about maybe making the goal smaller than what we really want to make, just so we have a better chance of actually getting something rather than nothing.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen one way or another. Through Indiegogo, right now we already have enough money to color or to cover a colorist, which
Okay.
is the most important part. So one way or another, even if we have to go old school on it and pull money out of our own pockets to do it, to finish meeting that budget we have, so be it. So no one has to feel like this isn't something that potentially can't happen. It's going to happen one way or another.
All right. So once the Indiegogo is done, what would be your ETA on getting out the issues to your backers?
Right now, we have it planned for August, because, again, we're talking 91 pages,
Hmm.
so that's a lot of work for our colorist. And if we have the money to do it, we're actually planning on having it re-lettered as well, with maybe some new word balloons that are a little bit better than what we had. So like I said, we're kind of looking at just taking a project that we're really, really happy with, and just turning it up a notch and making it even better.
Sounds good. All right, Eric, thank you for coming on the show. That's all the time I have for today. I'm pretty sure this video is going to come out to a little over an hour, but it's always fun meeting creators like you guys who come up with unique ideas like Sporkman. And you know what? You got a backer in me. So I'll be back in the Kickstarter because I have an account already set up with Kickstarter. So like I said, give me that link as soon as possible. Let me know, and I will jump right on and back it. And put the link in the description of this video and let all your backers know. Most of the people who do use Kickstarter, you guys have the opportunity to make updates, and most of the creators that I've done on the show, they've used this video to as an update for their backers to kind of give them a little bit more insight. So you could, if you can, if you want, it's okay. It'll be on YouTube, and it'll be there for the whole entire world to see. All right. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem. And if you guys run like Sporkman goes to the YMCA for some reason, if you want to come on the show again, I would love to have you guys back on again for sure.
Well, we do have the next storyline we're going to be doing is called Sporkman on the High Seas,
Oh,
and
pirates?
that is already about 90% written.
Nice. Well, I would love to hear about that because I'm all about seas, and it sounds like that pirates are going to be involved somehow. So,
Yes, they are.
so when that goes live on Indiegogo, or you guys are planning on about to launch, let me know ASAP, and we can get you guys back on the show, and you can talk more about how Sporkman is going to be a badass with pirates. I'm down.
All right.
All right. But thank you for coming on the show, Eric. And good luck on all of your endeavors.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good one.
And that's all we have for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this video, which I hope you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. If it's your first time viewing one of my interviews, well, welcome, and please hit that subscribe button. I upload twice a week, every Sunday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Sunday, however you want to engage that. If you are an indie artist and you're working on something, a campaign, an Indiegogo, a Kickstarter, or you're just an artist who uploads to Webtoons or Tapas, and you want to kind of widen your audience, please let me know. I am looking for people to come onto the show throughout the month of June. I'm almost fully scheduled for that month, and I will soon start scheduling for July. So please let me know what is your project that you're working on. You can find me on Twitter at heroic_studios and on Instagram at will@heroic_studios. And right now you might not be able to find me because I currently have a profile picture of my female self. Pretty cool. Try that face app. You'll love it. All right, guys, that's it for today. I'll join you guys later on this week on Sunday with another creator, and I think we're going to be talking about Jack Irons, and that is a pretty cool comic. So I'll see you guys next time, and share this video, and remember to support all indie creators everywhere. You guys have a good week. Bye.